This video is about critical thought. Specifically, it's about the absence of critical thought in our society. But let me be clear, I'm not meaning by critical thought the ability to express an intellectual position. I'm talking about the fact that so many people's intellectual positions are being expressed without any critical analysis behind them. We're living in a society where we've got so much access to information, but it also means that we've got so much access to people's opinion. We've got the shock jocks on cable TV, the influencers on Instagram and Facebook. We've got all of these people with massive megaphones with the ability to express their opinions. And what happens is that we hear these opinions being expressed in an intelligent way, and it fits with the worldview that we've already got. So it becomes very easy to embrace that perspective and to then share it with others. This, I think, is the condition of our society. This is what's happening with social media. I'm feeling this right now because I'm back in Los Angeles, which is where I used to live 6 years ago. And I've caught up with some old friends who have said to me that they're really frustrated by the lack of critical thought in society here. They've been telling me that the society here has become so polarized that you're either part of the progressive camp or the conservative camp, you're pro-abortion or you're anti-abortion. There's all of these different camps around these critical issues. And my friends have been telling me that they're really frustrated by this state of affairs. It's really difficult to have conversations with people. But then I thought about it and I thought, this is not just about the United States of America. I've been living in different parts of the world and doing a lot of traveling over the last 6 years. I've been to almost all continents, and I think that this is distinctive of all societies in the world these days. This is about the way that technology enables the very fast spread of information, and it enhances the ability of opinion makers to share their opinions in ways that rile up people's emotions. The problem in democracies is that politicians have been forced into the position that the only way they can win votes is to break down their perspectives into bite-sized chunks and to share it in a very emotive way. Politicians have publicists that train them in how to create movements, how to break things down, how to simplify everything. We've got the fusion of politics with the media, with technology, which results in a complete lack of critical analysis in our public discourse. So that's the situation that I think we find ourselves in, and I don't think that we can wait for the problems to solve themselves. I don't think we can wait for the media to just get better at what they're doing. I think that each of us has to take personal responsibility for developing critical thought. And the thing that I think is really important in critical thought is bringing a lot more humility to the intellectual positions that we take. I think that it's okay to admit our ignorance, to let go of a lot of the propositions that we think are really important, and instead shift to a more values-based framework in how we approach a lot of these issues. So I want to explain this by going through a couple of the very controversial issues of today and just share with you from my own personal perspective why I find them so confusing and so difficult to arrive at a very clearly well thought out intellectual position. So the first is around immigration, and particularly immigration to the Western and liberal parts of the world, which are the parts of the world that I come from and where many people watching this probably live. So if you live, for example, in Europe, and Europe's going through these big debates right now, and in Europe, the society, the collective society, has developed based on the principles of tolerance, solidarity, respect for others, open-mindedness, and these are really beautiful parts of what Europe represents. I think these are all principles that we can really believe in and really stand for. But the challenge comes when immigration reaches the point where there's a lot of people coming in that want to live in Europe for the good living conditions that are there. They want to live there precisely because they're welcomed with tolerance and respect. But if so many people come, there's enough people that are not adopting those same values themselves. So in this debate, I think that a lot of people, there's like a spectrum of different perspectives to take. So on the one hand, people are just completely committed to tolerance, respect, openness, and think we should let everyone in. We should break down the barriers, the boundaries of the world, and just let people move around freely. But then on the other hand, I think there's a lot of people that equally have a lot of respect for these same values, but they worry that if enough people come in, the society itself starts to lose its grip on those values if these people that come in aren't going to embrace those values themselves. So I only want to share my own personal experience of this issue. I don't want to tell you what position you should take, but I think that if we can respect these values of openness, solidarity, respect for others, tolerance, that's what really matters. As for the specific policy positions that we take, that's where I think that politics takes over, and that's where the fusion with the media has got its grip on the public imagination. I think we need to take one step back and just understand what these values really are, and we need to respect other people that have a different perspective on these issues. But when it comes to the people that don't have these same values as you, that's when it's okay to have big disagreements and to work through some sort of process to arrive at a different understanding. Because I think that these two sides of the debate, the kind of beautiful part of it is that these people are sharing the same fundamental values. It's just in the application of it where things get really difficult and we end up devolving into these shouting matches. So rather than focusing so much on the specifics and shouting at each other and getting trapped in the opinion makers on Facebook and Instagram and everything, I feel like if we can have that one step back, we can let go of this need to have such a strong intellectual position on what needs to happen and just connect deeply with those values themselves, then I think that we're in a better position anyway. The other issue is abortion, and this one I find very intellectually challenging because, again, on the one hand, we've got people that are completely anti-abortion, and that's based, I think, on an important value that is around the sanctity of life. Now, there's a lot of intellectual debates around when life begins, but it's very difficult for science to resolve this because it gets to the point of what is life, what is consciousness, when does consciousness begin? If there's a heartbeat at an early stage of the development of the fetus, does that signify life? When is the fetus separated from the mother as its own independent entity? It's extremely difficult to figure this out. But what really matters, I think, is that value of life. But at the same time, on the other side, if you value life, you've got to also value the self-determination of the individual, and in this case, it's the woman's self-determination. So life isn't just about breathing, because if that's all that it was about, we'd be okay with slavery. But we're not okay with slavery because we believe that someone needs to have the ability to choose their own life, to make their own decisions, to live with freedom. So why can't we extend that freedom to the woman's right to choose whether to carry the baby right through to being born? This is where I think that if we go one step back and we realize that what the value system is all about is about life, that's where we can all agree on something. We can connect with each other. We can realize that the value itself is good. That's a wonderful value to have. But then in the application of those values, it's really challenging. I mean, a case can be made right across the board. And that's why I think that if we could have that one step back and just soften our intellectual positions, connect much more with the values that go into it, we can have better conversations with each other. So those are some of the big political issues of our time that I think a lot of us are disagreeing on. And I think that if we can just take a step back and let go of such strong intellectual positions and instead focus on the values that are driving us to the thoughts that we have, I think that we can connect with each other based on a lot more tolerance and open-mindedness and understanding of each other that are really the values that are driving us to our perspectives in the first place. I think this is desperately needed in this day and age. I think that we're living in a very unique time when the media system itself is grabbing hold of politics, and politicians, it's actually not so much that they're being forced into the position of developing these sound bites, but rather that the way politics operates self-selects the kinds of people that are attracted to that way of doing politics. I think we're losing access to politicians that want to develop well thought out positions, that want to engage with the public and have these broader public conversations. So in the face of all this, I think it's up to us to take personal responsibility for developing our own abilities of critical thought. And I think that the way for us to do that is to bring in a lot more humility in our intellectual positions.